Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis is the host of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive YouTube show. He joins us now live. What is overall the U.S. involvement in this war between Israel and Hamas, and what could happen next with that U.S. involvement?
Well, so far, it's as you've been showing with these senators in Israel and President Biden's visit. One of the biggest things is we show that we have, America's complete and total backing of the Israeli government and the Israeli people. That's, I think, one of the most important things because it gives them international credibility and support throughout the Western world. But the second thing is the much more practical component is that we are giving them now substantial ammunition, armaments, especially in terms of interceptor rockets for the Iron Dome, and now apparently 2 additional Iron Dome systems, millions probably rounds of machine gun bullets and other kinds of rounds of ammunition, and then intelligence support. That's what we've offered so far, and some of that's already begun to land, especially those Iron Dome rocket interceptors are going to be crucial because that's the biggest ability that Hamas has to actually strike Israel is through their missile fire, because they can't anymore. They can't go outside that fence. And every time you fire a missile in there, you have an interceptor missile. Well, those things can get depleted pretty quickly. So that's going to be one of the major issues for Israel is to keep that supply of the missiles going pretty quickly.
So Hezbollah is already essentially involved in attacks on Israel, but I do want to get your opinion on this. If they were to officially join with Hamas in the war, what would that mean for Israel, and does it change anything for the U.S. involvement?
Well, it depends, first of all, in terms of Israel. It depends a lot on how big of an incursion it turns out to be. Now, the leadership of Hezbollah has threatened to make it a large incursion, to open up a full second front, a northern front on the war for the IDF, saying that if you go into Gaza proper, if you actually launch an incursion into the strip with sizable ground forces, then we're going to open up a northern front. Now, it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to do. And so far, as you pointed out, all we've been seeing is small attacks, rocket shots here and there, mortar rounds, etc. But you haven't seen any large-scale attacks in either direction, really. And that's certainly in Israel's benefit that it not go into that degree. And I'm sure that they're given all kinds of warnings that they would, unleash holy hell on them. I'm certain that that's the case. Because they want to keep them out and they don't need another attack. But the question is, what would the United States do? Now, I'll tell you what the United States should do, and that is to continue to give Israel support and justification for defending themselves. But we should not get directly involved. And I've been hearing lots of American lawmakers and a bunch of others, much experts say that, yeah, if Hamas gets involved or if Hezbollah gets involved, then we should get involved with direct attacks and come into the aid of Israel. And I'm telling you, we should not do that. That would be a bad move for the United States because now that puts us potentially in the crosshairs, both our troops in Iraq, in Syria, where we have them on the ground, our ships in the water. I mean, it could actually expand into a war potentially with Iran. And that is definitely not in America's interest. Israel has the capacity to defend themselves. They fought these wars before. There's a reason why we've been giving them $3.8 billion annually for their defense. It's a reason why we're trying to, bump that up to $14 billion, according to President Biden the other day in his Oval Office speech. Israel is strong. They are capable of defending themselves, and they don't need extra help, just like they did in the 1967 and 1973 Arab-Israeli wars. They can handle it. They don't need external help, and we don't need to get into a new war.
We know that President Biden did go over to Israel to show his support for Israel and show that the U.S. does stand with them. Now, he was expected after that to go to Jordan and meet with the leaders of Jordan, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority. That obviously did not happen. What role did the Gaza hospital bombing play in that? And then also, did it have any sort of other impact on the war itself?
Well, yeah. Well, expressly, the bombing of the hospital parking lot was the total catalyst for that event because the King of Jordan said so. He said that we're going to cancel this because of what happened there. It definitely angered most of the Arab street, for that matter, and many of the Arab governments in the area, and that put a big freeze on what the U.S. was doing. And that was one of the primary purposes of Biden going there, was to have personal diplomacy, face-to-face with a lot of these Arab leaders, to hopefully pave the way to keep things from expanding out. So that was a big loss, I think, on our part. But unfortunately, the problem was actually started before Biden got there, even before the hospital bombing, because Secretary of State Blinken had been sent to the region to talk to these same people to pave the way and set the stage for it. And he did not accomplish much of anything that we could see publicly. He didn't get any kind of public declarations of support from al-Sisi in Egypt. He didn't get anything from Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. In fact, he was actually put on hold. He was supposed to have met with MBS on a certain night, his arrival, and the MBS just said, "Yeah, you can wait for several hours. I'll see you in the morning." It was a slap in the face and a shot across the bow that our influence is not as strong as we'd like it. And now that here with Jordan, one of our strongest long-term friends in the region, now that he even postponed it, and there's been no talk about opening that back up since. That's a problem, or it could be, because it is crucial for Israel to maintain at least decent relations with the Arab regimes in the region, because they were working toward they had the Abraham Accords. They were working towards normalization and improvement with Saudi Arabia. Those things need to continue because that's good for the entire region. It's definitely good for Saudi Arabia. But if that gets undercut, then the potential risk for Israel would go up.
We know that a lot of Americans are following this fairly closely. They're getting bits and pieces of the information as there are updates that are coming in pretty much on an hourly basis at this point that we're passing along. Why is it so important that Americans pay close attention to what is going on between Israel and Hamas?
Well, anytime you're talking about sending, tens of billions of dollars to another country when we're already pretty tight financially and economically, and you're also talking about, we've already given $113 billion to Ukraine. Now then there's wanting another $60 billion this year. And, you have the potential for engaging in combat efforts. People are even, openly suggesting that maybe we get involved militarily against Hezbollah. Maybe we get involved militarily with Iran, which some are openly advocating for. Americans need to be paying attention. We don't want to be caught unprepared, and we don't want people taking action in our names that we don't even know anything about, because war and peace are maybe the top issue that affects our country, because it could cause our people to be killed. It could cause our interests to be harmed worldwide. And we need to make sure that we don't go to war unless our country has been threatened, unless someone's coming after us. They target us, for example. But we should not go and search for wars to fight. And especially if Israel is capable of handling it, they need to handle it. And our people need to be paying attention so that we don't give acquiescence to any of our leaders who may say, yes, let's go and get into another war. I mean, we just badly got out of one in Afghanistan after 2 decades, and we don't need to get sucked into another one, frankly.
And I know you touched on this, but I want to do a deep dive, so to speak, as we go a little bit deeper into this.
Love that.
Is it possible that we could potentially see at some point the war does expand a little bit more to other parts of the region? We've heard a lot from Iran essentially issuing a threat against Israel to stop its attacks over on Gaza. So is this something that could expand soon?
Look, I'll tell you, Iran is a big talker, but they are not a big doer. And they do not want a direct conflict with the United States. They can't handle it. They couldn't survive it, probably. They don't want a war with the United States. And if it's up to them, they're not going to fight one. And they, even earlier today, were talking about how, they oppose what's going on in Hamas, with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But they're not. But they're saying, hey, but if anybody does anything, that we don't control these proxies. Of course, that's nonsense. They do, but they're definitely saying that we don't want to get involved with this. And they said, yeah, we might attack if we're attacked. And so, if we don't attack Iran, Iran's not going to do anything because they don't want to invite a horrific response that the West could give, the United States in particular. I mean, you saw that after we, basically took out their senior general, Soleimani, a couple of years ago. That was a huge insult to them, and they wanted to retaliate, but they didn't have the capacity to do it. They knew that if they hit us too hard, that we would then come back in ways they couldn't defend against. So they are constrained. They are deterred from attacking us as long as we don't open Pandora's box and go after them like Senator Lindsey Graham has suggested, and that's a bad idea. Now, people need to be paying attention to that, because while Iran can't go toe-to-toe with us and won't attack us, if we go in heavy with them and try to take out their regime, they do have some ability. They could launch long-range rockets into Israel, and I mean big one, powerful ones. They could also mine the Strait of Hormuz. They could send everybody's gas prices through the roof. They could attack some of our ships. They have a lot of fast patrol boats. There's a lot of things they can do if they're desperate. We just need to make sure that we don't give them any reason to do it, and make sure they know that if they do attack anything, there will be a withering response. We do not need another war in the Middle East. Israel can handle their defense. So let's continue to give them armaments and give them support, but we cannot get into another war. That's the bottom line.